Hi, everyone, and welcome to the probably best debate of the year in celebration of the World Space Week 2022. My name is Hien, and I'm your host today. Today, I have the great honor to share a roundtable supported by the next generation of leaders in the rapidly growing space industry. In today's episode, Space4Youth, a Space and Sustainability Roundtable in the frameworks of the World Space Week and in collaboration with Janet's Planet Next Generation Leaders. We'll discuss our collective future through the vision of our world's youth. We will listen to the youth's criticism of the current state of the world and their proposals for the future. Now, in the past 2 years, this space show is going actually in the third year, I believe. We have dealt with very diverse topics and we have had relevant personalities. But in this show, we have exceeded all expectations in terms of topics and speakers. We have with us the real protagonists of what is called sustainability. Amongst them, Mr. Antonio Stark, the space Iron Man, right? Ms. Rhonda Stevenson and Janet Stevenson, accompanied by 5-6 youths through Janet's Academy. I have conviction that our youth today are the true guarantors of the future. We, the Space for Women, will continue to hold a safe container for the youth to support them, to surpass us in humanity, to create, to innovate, to impact, and to ensure that space exploration is carried out with respect, ethics, care, and for the benefit of all humanities. So guys, you have a big challenge ahead of you, but we all know you will succeed. I'm looking forward for an uplifting discussion today. Let me now introduce you to my co-organizer and dear friend, Janet Stevenson. I think most of you know Janet. She doesn't need an introduction. With the many roles and responsibilities and being of service in the space industry for almost 2 or 3 decades. Janet, to simply put, she is the reference point for me when it comes to ethical and passionate space education. Janet is a spirit-filled guardian and shepherdess of the next generation of space explorers. Through Janet's Planet, her mission is to encourage young people to stand in their magnificence and to inspire future generations to use their innate intelligence and creativity to create a better future via science, technology, engineering, art, and maths. For more information, visit janetplanet.com. Now over to you, Janet.
What a fantastic introduction. I pray I live up to even a thimbleful of your trust in me. It is my great honor this morning to bring together some of the best and brightest students from around the globe, some of them who have attended the Janet's Planet Astronaut Academy online and in person, and to bring 2 very dear friends in the space industry who are moving the needle forward and have always stood for space and sustainable practices. So without further ado, I think I'd like to do this first. I'm going to quickly give you an overview of the student geniuses that are on board with us today, and then introduce our speakers. Ander over there is 13 years old, and he's been a student both in a live camp as well as online for several years. And he is, again, many awards here. He just, this year, the virtual school is allowing him to participate in a weekly hands-on marine science class. He lives on the coastal North Carolina. He's a cadet in Civil Air Patrol and has just been awarded Civil Air Patrol Cadet of the Month. That is news to me. Congrats. Next to him is Priya. I don't know if you're seeing it this way. So, Ander, you have now somebody to look up to. Priya is also in Civil Air Patrol. She is a pilot. She has experienced 5 Gs. She was just at IAC in Paris. And I am telling you, if you ever want a question about aviation and civil air patrol and the future of space, I had the amazing privilege of introducing and giving NASA director and administrator Kathy Leaders and presenting her with an award this spring. Priya gave an introduction as well, and I basically said, Kathy, this is who you have paved the way for. And then Kathy gave about 40 minutes of her time privately to Priya to prepare her for what a future in aerospace could be like. So that is Priya. Catherine, 13 years old, has been a student online since 2020 and just won the state's Tennessee, the state award in the 3M challenge. You may have heard and remembered her from a season past when she talked about her invention. And that is what she won the 3M contest with, a way to create water for all mankind and possibly off-world. So she's already thinking about sustainable practices. Sachita, my love, is a National Honor Society, also attended Camp Online in 2020 and has been a student ever since, is doing amazing things as a 15-year-old, everything from being on the swim team to also, she and Catherine were part of writing a paper for SpaceWorks. They actually sent some thermoluminescent dosimeters to space in a high altitude balloon launch. They have a white paper that's been published. And again, guys, remember, they're 13 and 15, but they actually did this when they were 12 and 14. So again, among you, I present geniuses. And then we have Brittany Bowes, a winner of the Space Prize essay contest. I've been able to participate in mentoring her this year. Another brilliant gal who loves space, dentistry, fashion, art, writing. She is, I think, the future poet laureate that you're going to hear from. Again, she may even be doing dentistry on Mars someday. And last but not least is Hashim. And I met him almost 5 years ago at Destination Imagination, and I believe he will lead the way for Pakistan to have a space agency. He's incredible. His team has won several awards with Cities in Space and other, it's like participated with other aviation studies here in the USA with IAAA. So again, all of these students are without a doubt the best and brightest. So you guys are going to be able to discuss. The first up we're going to hear from today is Rhonda Stevenson, who is the CEO of Orbital Assembly Corporation, but also has been doing thought processes on everything from space agriculture to sustainable ethical practices. And then after she speaks, we're going to hear from the delightful, amazing Antonio Stark. I met him years ago at a National Space Society conference and knew straight away that even then as a volunteer, this was a young man to be on the lookout for. He is participating in space policy and space advocacy, and also just named to be one of the top 100 men in aerospace on LinkedIn. But first, we're going to begin with Rhonda, so I'll give you the floor.
Good morning, Janet. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Rhonda Stevenson. I'm the president and CEO of Orbital Assembly Corporation. And we do a lot of things to participate in World Space Week, but I think that always having the opportunity to collaborate with Janet and Janet's Planet is like my most favorite thing to do. A little bit about my background before Orbital Assembly. And currently, I'm also the president and CEO of the Tau Zero Foundation, which is a nonprofit that focuses on advanced propulsion and energy storage, because wherever we go, we need to be able to take all of our stuff with us and have, the energy to sustain us once we get there. And so the way that Tau Zero and Orbital Assembly overlap is, one is about getting as many people into space as possible in a sustainable manner. The other is to be able to provide the resources to make that possible, and the propulsion, energy, all those types of things. And so with that, I did want to speak a little bit just on the World Space Week Forum in general, just so everyone knows. World Space Week is literally for everyone on the planet. And then that's why it was established And so I invite you for next year or the following years, if you haven't launched your own initiative, to start thinking about that now. They announced what the annual topic's going to be roughly in November, December, and it's self-organized. If it's something that you're interested in doing and it's applicable to that topic, or find some applicability to those topics, please participate. This is the way that we evangelize space for everyone, by getting that participation, by getting the volume of people participating in this as an effort. It doesn't cost anything, and it serves to touch as many people as possible. So please keep that in mind for next year. If you're thinking, I might want to participate in that. I think it's very important that everyone knows about that level of accessibility. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about, and I'll get to slides in just a second, but I believe it was Sachita. Hi, Sachita, it's good to see you. Was talking about, is it water for everyone on a planet, and sustainable practices. One of the things that I don't get a chance to really talk about much when I'm talking about orbital assembly and its context of what we provide, but everything that orbital assembly does with respect to its partnerships is about sustainability. And currently we have partnerships with companies that are working very, very hard to provide a better life for people here on Earth. And folks often say, well, what's the spend? Why should we focus so much energy on going to space and utilizing space when there are so many needs that need to be addressed here on Earth? And what I say to that is so very often, consistently, everything that we try to accomplish in space and how we push the outer boundaries of what we call our ecosystem. Those partnerships not only do well for on-orbit applications and beyond, but they also directly relate to the benefits here on Earth. So the better that we get about doing things in space, the better our planet will become, and we will lessen that carbon footprint, and we will lessen the activities that tap our resources in a way that are not productive. And I know that that's a bit philosophical, but to give you an example of that, we're partnered with a company called Covalent. Covalent is all about providing clean water for everyone. That's definitely sustainability, absolutely Earth-centric. However, by partnering with them for on-orbit capabilities, we also bring those applications and technologies in a way that enhance that spend here on Earth as well. And so moving forward, anyone who has an interest in space, it doesn't mean you have to go there to participate productively. And so I would ask that everyone keep that in mind. And so with that, I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna move these folks around, and we're gonna hop to the slideshow. And I go through this rather quickly because I don't want to go over on my own time, but we're Orbital Assembly. We develop and operate the first profitable space business park with gravity, a decade ahead of our competitors. Our value proposition is that we provide gravity. And why do we provide gravity? Well, it's because gravity, some measure of gravity, for long-term sustainability on orbit is necessary. It's actually to the point of being somewhat of an ethical concern. Once the human body is in microgravity for roughly 48 hours, the impacts of microgravity begin to impact you at that time. And when astronauts return to Earth, some of them still have long-term fallout from being in microgravity for an extended period of time. What we are providing with our design is we're using equipment and implementations that are COTS products, or commercial off-the-shelf products. They're materials that already have spaceflight heritage, and it's how we put them together to provide a hybrid environment, which means that from an industry standpoint, we can capitalize on all the benefits of industry in a microgravity environment, but then also provide at least partial gravity for sustained congress in space. It's more comfortable, it's less stressful, it's better for us physiologically. And one of the things that we've done to demonstrate that as a valid statement is we've partnered with Dr. Mae Jameson, whom I'm sure everyone is familiar with, and with Dr. Ronki Olabisi at UC Irvine to produce a gravity review, which is an analysis of all of the data, the content that we've gotten from microgravity experience and its impact on the human body and just organic systems for the last 60 years. And now we have this defensible thesis that yes, some gravity is better than none. And with respect to industry, that's also true for how some things work in space. 3D printers, they like to have just a little bit of gravity. And so we continue to build out on those efforts. And so a little bit about Orbital Assembly's team, myself, Mr. Tim Alatorre, who is a phenomenal space architect, Dr. Thomas Spilker, who through JPL has put something around every planetary body that we've visited. He is just a treasure. I cannot say enough about him. And his partner, his wife, is Dr. Linda Spilker, who runs the Cassini program. So he's just a phenomenal person to have on our team. And then there's Robert Miyake. And then again, this is our core team. Robert Miyake, he's one of the folks who was a central figure in producing the Boeing 727. And he's taken all of his thermodynamics and flight heritage experience, and now he spends his time with us. So as I said, we are building the world's first space business park with gravity. This is just a conceptual design. We're very careful about what our design actually looks like. But if you had to associate a picture to it, it would look something like this. And with that, a lot of folks want to know, well, what do you do when you get to space? You know, it's not just a science project anymore. And one of the things that we're focusing on is being able to provide a large volume of space. Microgravity absolutely provides an environment where certain chemicals, certain products assemble and make a superior product than making something here on Earth. And so there's a huge market for those things. But one of the obstacles has been that it's not sustainable, or it can't be produced in a volume kind of way with a lot of content, and then getting it back down to Earth has also been one of those obstacles. And that's something that we can continue to develop. With respect to having this commercial facility and a hybrid environment, we don't have to do the crew interchange as frequently. You send your labor force to orbit to do their jobs, and they can stay there in a sustained manner over a longer period of time because they have the partial gravity environment to take advantage of. And so I'm just going to kind of go through here so you can get a better gist of what some of our products are going to look like, and some of the design. And so with respect to what you would do on a Pioneer station, which is our first class space station that then scales to a larger station called Voyager, there's data communications, there's manufacturing, there's research. Even though we're talking heavy industry, companies still need a large volume facility to go to vet out their products and to vet out their approaches for manufacturing. So it's not just a science experiment, but it's not full-scale production yet either. And so we'll provide the platform for that. And you know, just as much as it's important to get up to orbit, it's also very nice to be able to come back down. And so we have a lot of different ways to partner for upmassing and for downmassing. So as folks are continuing to produce and manufacture on orbit, we have a sustainable end-to-end system for bringing product up, but then also being able to down mass it in a way that it gets into consumers' hands quickly and efficiently. It's not a remote island and, you know, far off and away. It's very close by, it's very near term. And if you wanted to think about in terms of how close space actually is, space is closer than the distance between LA and San Diego. I mean, space is closer than most road trips a lot of folks take. And I think that often gets, you know, forgotten because you think that it's very far away. And so for orbital assembly, we have multiple phases. Right now, we are looking to purchase our first piece of hardware for our phase 1 of Pioneer Station. Everything about Pioneer Station and that phase 1 configures into our phase 1 to phase 2 of Pioneer. And then everything about the components that are used for Pioneer Station also scale forward to Voyager Station. And so everything is reusable, everything has flight heritage. And so again, this isn't a question of doing something new or leapfrogging a technology, but rather using what we have available today that we've already established that we're pretty good at keeping people relatively safe in space, and then being able to provide larger platforms so that we can get more people up there to do greater things. And with respect to being able to provide gravity, we also are attacking the questions of, well, how do you get ready for a long duration mission to the lunar surface? Or how will you provide gravity for the occupants in a ship going to Mars? You can't think that we're just going to send a whole bunch of people to Mars and just drop them off after being in a microgravity environment for months on end. With the designs that we're providing and with the phases that we have, you can travel to Mars and have a Martian level of gravity. So by the time you arrive at the Mars surface, you've been acclimated, your systems are acclimated, you are ready for that environment. And so there's a lot of talk about, well, what about Axiom? What about Northrop Grumman? We love them. We see them as our future partners. We don't see this as a competitive this or them, us or those guys over there. Everything that we're looking to provide is for everyone. And so we want Axiom and Northrop Grumman to continue to be successful and to continue to reach their benchmarks. It is absolutely critical that they do, because when you look at it in a different lens, if you look at this as a global problem to solve, there are over 7 billion people on the planet. That's 7 billion customers. In our lifetime, once the utilization of the space ecosystem really comes to the fore with larger platforms, there are not enough companies, there are not enough scientists, there are not enough people to address this problem and to accommodate all of those customers. And so I hope that gave you a good, bird's eye view of some of the activities of orbital assembly. One of the things that I always tell my students and folks that I come across is we are always 100% accessible. Please, if you have any questions, you want to reach out to me, I am available. And I would ask that you reach out, you ask questions, don't be shy about it. Don't think that you have to do all this prep. Please reach out, because that's something through Janet's Planet that I've always been a huge proponent of. So Janet, thank you for having me. And
no, thank you so much. No, and again, as you guys are watching and or listening, I hope you hear that Orbital Assembly and Rhonda, they are all about preparing all the ways that life, like from physiology considerations to how we can live sustainably. So that's kind of a perfect flow into Antonio Stark, who is going to now, I can't tell you again, this is a remarkable human. It's like take a good look at that face, because he is doing great and mighty things and will do even more. But he's really talking about space policy, there's space debris mitigation. Antonio, I want to now give you the floor, and then we will ask our students to weigh in and ask some questions.
Sure.
And
So
you'll
thank you
have-
so much for having me here, Janet. It's great to be here and also seeing all the young students here in this show, as well as co-panelists. I'm Antonio Stark. You might have seen me around on the internet and social media, but I currently work in a diverse array of fields and a diverse array of organizations, but primarily in the field of space policy and space strategy. I currently work under the direction of the United Nations, or via partnership with the United Nations at the Space Generation Advisory Council as the regional coordinator for the Asia Pacific region. I also work with the Moon Village Association for a sustainable and equitable use of the lunar environment as the East and Southeast Asia regional coordinator. I also work with the Space Court Foundation in developing a lot of policies and laws that are being used or will be used for the space in the future, both by individual governments as well as government consortium or multinational accords. As Jan also knows, I work closely with the National Space Society for about 6 years up to this point, as well as a startup in South Korea named Unmanned Exploration Laboratory. I've done a lot of things in my life that really led me to where I am now, but every single one of my experiences has been somewhat relevant to the space sector, or at least in exploring extreme environments. I have been an expedition member both to the Arctic Circle as well as to the Himalayas. You'll actually see here on the screen the photo of my expedition crew up in Svalbard, and one of the actually the most northernmost groundmass you can have in the Arctic. And I have been recognized various times by different organizations, including the International Astronautical Federation, the Asia Pacific Satellite and Communications Consortium, and the Mars Generation. So again, it's very great to be here, especially for this year's World Space Week topic, which is space and sustainability. You will notice that, as Rhonda has already mentioned, the topic of World Space Week does change every year. For this year, it is space and sustainability. You would have heard sustainability thrown around a lot of times in the past few years, ever since the United Nations has also declared their Sustainable Development Goals back almost a decade ago. I've had the fortune to be working closely with the United Nations in this field in my different capacities and in my previous careers, but it's so important for the young generation to be interested in sustainability, because sustainability is no longer a faraway concept that we used to just think about. Like space sustainability, if it is not assumed now, will impact our own careers in the future. A lot of people who's listening to this now, maybe in the teens or in their early 20s, that means just 10, 20 years from now, space debris mitigation or space situational awareness will have an impact into your future. 10, 20 years from now, you'll be in your 30s or in your 40s, right at the peak of your career, and unsustainable use of the space environment or orbit will mean that we will not have clear access or transparent access to space, because there's so much orbital debris up here. We won't be able to launch satellites. Our satellites will be in dire danger every single time because there's risk of collision with space trash. Different emerging countries will not have a sustainable access to extraterrestrial environments like the moon and Mars, because existing spacefaring countries would already have occupied those places. Sustainable use is not only just technological, it's also for law and policy and how jurisdiction or laws are enacted and enforced in those places. We want to ensure that space is being used in a peaceful manner to really make sure that all the countries will have an equitable and democratic use and access to all the resources and potential that can be provided by space, and the things that you, your audience, the students you will be listening here will do right now in this decade will have repercussions for the next 5 to 6 generations because this is the generation, you are the generation that will be building the lunar bases, the Martian bases that will be used for the future generations, and how we develop ourselves, how we exercise or control technology, how the best practices that we are developing right now in utilizing resources, how we distribute it, allocate it, recognize ownership will have an impact for them. So we are in fantastically changing environment at the crux of the space age, and it's really good to see you all here.
I love everything that Antonio stands for. Like I said, when I met him, it would have been probably 6 or 7 years ago, I knew instantly he was going to make and trailblaze a path. Here's what I think I'd like to do in a rapid fire kind of succession. Antonio, do you have anything else to share, Antonio? I don't want to cut your time short. Or
honestly,
can we throw it?
Honestly, I am like right before we start the session, we have had an introduction of all the co-panelists here, and I am so interested to hear their stories of what questions they will have. So I'm very open to cutting my speech a bit shorter if I can listen more to the actual young professionals and students here. And of course, if you have more questions, I do have my Instagram and Twitter up here. You can always feel free to DM or PM me by these social media networks.
Beautiful. I'll ask you to close your screen. And you know what, Antonio, why don't you pose a question to these great thought young leaders? Because I think they've got great answers. What's your first question for them?
My question would be, what's the core topic of space sustainability for you? I've already mentioned a few: orbital debris, space situational awareness, which basically means ground tracking of what's happening up in your space, space debris mitigation, which is space trash, space traffic management, which is to ensure all the things, stations, spaceships don't collide with each other, as well as law and policy things such as the environments in the moon, like usage or resource ownership, jurisdiction, all very big words that may fly over our heads. In your perspective, in your life, in your current standpoint, what does space sustainability mean for you? What is one topic that you think is very important?
Priya.
Hello everyone, I'm Priya Abiram and I'm currently a student studying mechanical aerospace engineering at Cornell University, and it is awesome to be in this panel of amazing people. And Antonio, you'd brought up like really interesting points about considering unique aspects that aren't usually thought about, especially from a law and policy perspective into sustainability. And just to add into that, a big thing that for me personally as an aspiring aerospace entrepreneur is bringing in spin-offs from the aerospace industry back to benefiting life on Earth. And I think that's a really really important part of sustainability. For example, we just sent MOXIE, the technology demonstrator, to help produce oxygen on Mars, and bringing back that technology to say to Earth, and it kind of planting MOXIE on what I would imagine on top of like factories or on top of smokestacks to reduce the emission of poisonous gases such as methane or carbon dioxide. And if MOXIE is able to take carbon dioxide and methane from a Martian atmosphere to produce oxygen, and why can't we do that on Earth to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases? And secondly, we also sent out Ingenuity, the helicopter, to Mars to be able to, fly in really harsh Martian, really thin Martian atmospheric conditions. And if we're able to achieve that, why don't we bring back such technologies to improve the speed, efficiency of drones on Earth, and perhaps send them to higher altitudes, improve their ability to transport cargo, transport material, and improve transportation on Earth. And I think that it's important to not only look at space technology in the perspective of how can we build solutions that get us deeper into space, but also how can we bring back those solutions to home to improve medicine, to improve agriculture, to improve energy on Earth. And this way, not only benefiting the human condition, but also garnering public support for the aerospace industry. And apart from spin-off technology and other big aspect that I think is important in sustainability is also just the inclusion of not only STEM or STEAM professionals, but also non-STEM professionals, and just bring together diverse communities in order to go forward with solutions. And of course, we not only need like moving forward with coming up with settlements or habitats or colonization, we not only need engineers, doctors, and medical professionals in space, but we also need artists, we need poets, we need ways people can communicate the impact that the space industry has on everyone's daily lives. So I think those are other aspects of sustainability that will help the aerospace industry progress and impact more people's lives.
And that, you all, is why I call these young people geniuses. So, Catherine, would you like to build on that? Because it's like it was Catherine, Rhonda, that has this idea for how to provide water for everyone. Catherine, your thoughts on what does sustainability mean to you?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Catherine. I'm 13. So in this past year, I've focused a lot on water sustainability. So I was this last season, I presented about an invention I have, the Aquabot, that condenses clean water out of the air for people in need. And the main thing about that, I created it so that we can have a sustainable source for water. And not only can that be used like in space or on Mars, but it can also be used here on Earth because so many people don't have access to water, which is vital for all life to survive.
So for you, for Catherine, sustainability sounds like that means water. Ander, your thoughts. What does sustainability mean to you?
Hello, my name is Ander, and I am also 13 years old. I think a big part of sustainability, one of the biggest issues, is going to be government. We need to decide how everything's going to fare out. Is it just going to be if a country puts the flag on the planet, then the whole planet's theirs? Is there going to be some huge governing body? And one of the really important parts of that is history. Not too long ago, I used to be saying, why am I learning history? When am I ever going to use this? Well, now is the time we're going to have to use this. We're going to have to use them as examples. The Mongols, they had a great idea for government. They had one centralized government and different areas and different people out in the other areas, and they would report back to them and make all the decisions. And that was a great idea. But for the Mongols, where it went wrong is that the area was too large for everyone to converge to one person. And in the French Revolution, there was the great idea for making sure not one person can become too powerful, which is never a good sign. But the problem there is no one could agree on what exactly they wanted. Some people wanted the monarchy completely abolished. Some people wanted a constitutional monarchy. So they ended up splitting into two groups, and the Jacobins became really radical, and their ideas started to sort of get corrupted. And then the problem there was that it's good to be able to have your ideas and be able to express them and believe strongly in them. But when an idea becomes radical is when it becomes an issue. So space government definitely needs to learn from the past to make sure we don't make the same mistakes many civilizations long ago made, but to also make sure we learn from the experiences, make sure we take into account what worked.
So space law is your path to sustainability. Sachita, what does sustainability in space and on Earth mean to you?
Hi, I'm Sachita. I'm 15 years old. And by definition, sustainability is the ability to maintain something at like a certain rate or a level. And to me, sustainability is kind of the protection of wildlife and our forests and greenery on Earth. Because due to conflicts, like recent conflicts, we've been losing lots of protected land. For example, in Ukraine, over 900 pieces of protected land have been lost due to the conflicts. And I believe and I completely agree with Ander, if we can somehow like alter space government, and space has always been like some way where there's been international peace, and there hasn't been like any wars, not much conflict until now, of course. But if we do kind of alter our government, and we could somehow start impacting the earth in that sense as well.
Beautiful. Hashim, what does sustainability mean to you, my friend?
I am Hashim and I'm 13. For me, sustainability would probably mean energy and electricity and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't really know that like what's the best way to provide energy to households and stuff, but there's actually a lot of problems with stuff that we think is sustainable. For example, like solar panels. Those are sustainable, but like when you stop to use them, then they actually start to become really toxic, and that's very bad for the environment. So for me, sustainability would probably mean a good source of energy.
Beautiful. And you're correct. It's like solar panels are great, but we also know that it's like in some of the solar farms, it can harm animals and those kinds of things. Brittany, we'll go to you. What does sustainability mean to you, love?
Hi, I'm Brittany Bose. I'm senior class president at Bayside High School, and I'm in the Humanities and Nonprofit Management program. And I believe that as the expansion of the private sector of space activities continue, they're posing new challenges daily to the space industry. And I believe that sustainability to me means governance and management. I believe that it's highly vital and important to be able to manage all the new technologies, all the new satellites that we're planning on launching, and being able to make sure that we're able to actually manage what we're doing. Like, yes, we're able to do all of these things, but are we able to manage them at the same time? Because if it gets out of control and there's lack of management, then obviously that is literally a route for disaster.
Again, I hope I see Antonio nodding his head. I see Rhonda smiling. Antonio, what do you have to say to some of these answers?
I must say that some of the answers I was very much expecting and I was hoping to hear, but some of the answers were very new, making references to affairs that I honestly did not think about connecting. And it really makes me realize how important it is to have young generations, because not only are they the ones who have to deal with this, but they're also the ones who can make these very novel connections that older adults can't really think about. I'm also very happy to hear that we are echoing some of the very same problems or thoughts that we're thinking. So a lot of people who are already involved in the space sector are kind of taking for granted that space exploration will happen automatically, and that we just need to think about how to do existing space exploration better. But a lot of the things that I heard about here was how to bring those benefits back to whole humanity as a whole. Not like humanity as a spacefaring civilization ideal, but like people here are like your own parents, your own like societies and schools. How can you bring it to change or change climate change, or how to make like better technology for your neighbors? Like that type of connection is really heartening to hear, and it's really what like our space should be for. We're staring across to the stars. We're not really losing focus on where we came from. So it's very good to hear that. Also very good to hear a lot of students are already thinking about taking careers into space, especially in space policy and law and strategy and business management, with the recent changes of emerging countries and companies coming into the space sector and becoming a very, very big actor. So very valuable to hear. I'm very thankful that I'm here.
Do you have a question for any of them?
Let me see. So Brittany, you were talking about companies, right? About what is the role of companies that will be going into space. You actually gave the shortest answer among everyone. So I will pose a question to you saying, how do you see companies being responsible in the space sector? So in the last few years, we have seen that companies actually have social responsibilities or corporate social responsibilities. How do you feel that concept applies to space companies?
I feel like that concept applies to space companies because if they are using space and they're planning on launching their technologies up there, then they should be very aware of what they're doing and how they're doing it. For example, companies like SpaceX and companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, they have to take into account the amount that they're producing. They have to take into account where they're producing their technologies, and they have to take into account who's doing it and when. And all the components of that makes it sustainable, and all the components of that falls onto the company. And I know SpaceX has been making it their mission to produce sustainable technology and work more so with the environment than destroy the environment. Because once again, ultimately, as you stated, the environment, this is home. So without it, we won't be able to launch off and go to space. So we have to take care of it and make sure we're keeping it sustainable.
Brilliant. Rhonda, do you have any questions for this fine roundtable of ours?
Actually, I do. And one of the things that I'm getting out of the conversation is the clear evidence that the perceptions that there are greater barriers to entry into space development, they're starting to break down, and there's a greater sense of ownership, which is lovely to see. It's not a matter of, oh, I hope I can get there, to now there being an inevitability that's just how this will go moving forward, and that's just wonderful to see. My question, and it's an open question to everyone, is with respect to sustainability and the efforts that directly benefit life here on Earth, how do you message how critical the development of space access is to achieving the betterment of conditions on Earth to a populace that currently doesn't value space development, space exploration?
So Priya, what would if I were to go, all right, you've got to produce a commercial and you've got to, show everyone the urgency of this, what would that sound like?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really interesting question, because I've come across such populations myself, and trying to navigate those conversations have definitely taught me a lot. And a really important way of just portraying space exploration, it's important to show that we're not trying to escape Earth and go to another planet or go build a settlement on Mars. We are doing space exploration to preserve the one planet that we call home. And it is important to kind of communicate that we do believe that this is Earth is our primary spot, and Earth is where all our resources lie. And we are using space, we're leveraging space as a creative platform to improve the condition that we are in. And thinking about space as a platform for exploration and for research and for improvement, rather than a platform for escape or platform for, straying away from, just looking into and going away from the problems that we're facing on Earth, is critical to communicate and convey. And I think it's also important to note that it's important to talk about the spin-offs that space has already brought to our planet and the benefits that we've already leveraged from, say, the Apollo missions, and why we went to the moon, and now why are we going back to the moon. It is important to communicate the technological advancements and the medical advancement that comes out of such expeditions, and just communicate the importance of what the space industry has been giving back to improving oceans on Earth and improving the atmosphere around us. And yes, there is definitely a lot more work to be done in terms of bringing back those technologies and advancements to improve our population.
I'm convinced. Ander, What is your conversation to everyone about the importance of why now?
So I think Priya made some excellent points. And I think, again, one of the main points is we're not leaving to escape Earth. I think another one of the big points is we're leaving Earth, and we're having people head to space to learn more about our planet. We're having them learn more about the other planets and what went wrong with the Mars atmosphere. If we could figure out why the Mars atmosphere is so thin and why it's been dissipated a little in the ozone layer, we could try and figure out and help our atmosphere stay stronger and more resilient to the sun. And another one of the things is we could find resources on Mars. Mars is a big planet. We haven't explored a lot of it, but we've still explored a good chunk. So there's a lot of places on Mars where we could find undiscovered resources. We could maybe even find some new elements with different properties that would help sustainability on Earth. Maybe some sort of property that could make building so much easier, or a property that attracts certain things like water from the air. So I definitely think that space exploration isn't just about leaving our planet behind, because it's important to stay here, but it's also important to have some people out of the Earth's atmosphere to learn a little bit more.
All right. Any other questions from our speakers, or Hien, do you have a question for our panelists today?
No, I don't. I am the one that's learning today. I'm actually just curious how you embody sustainability in your daily life.
Oh, good question. Hashim, Sachita, how do you embody sustainability in your daily life?
So, although I would love to consider myself as like a very sustainable person, I know that's not true, but there are like a couple of things that I definitely do to kind of preserve or be sustainable. And I think one thing that I do a lot is just like using the same water bottle every day so that I don't have to get a plastic one or reusing it. And even if I don't even if I don't have any water left, there's always some way I can go and refill it. There's also like using the same kind of lunch boxes and just recycling. And I know all of the things that I do will probably add up to make a big impact, although it's very tiny.
But you're speaking to something, if we all did it, if we all carried our own water bottle and refilled it with available water, instead of flooding our oceans with plastic that ends up being, eaten by the fish, and our fish being microplastics. So it's like your call to action there, I think, is, start small, start with one thing, and you'd be surprised at how that adds up to sustainability. Catherine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you made a really good point, Sachita. Like, all of us have to make our own contributions, no matter how small they seem. So, but the way for it to really make a big difference is if everyone contributes. So, like the earlier question was about communication. So you were saying that it seemed like, within this group, the idea of going to space has almost gotten like normalized. I feel like there's like a communication barrier between the general public and people in this community of like what it really means to go to space. And I feel like, space should really be incorporated into like the arts and literature, because that's what really gets to the people, so that everyone can contribute, just like Sachita is doing.
Antonio, I have to go to you. You were cheering for that answer. Tell me why. And then Brittany will come to you.
Yeah, so space used to be the sector of rocket scientists, honestly, engineers, mechanical engineers, systems engineers, electrical engineers, structural engineers, but engineers. It used to be a whole engineers club we have had a drastic change in that in the last few years, with the Dear Moon campaign from Japan planning to fly 5 artists over to the moon and around, where the space law and policy sector has become a tremendous force. We're just seeing that diversity and intersectional cross fertilization of ideas is finally seeing its light in the space sector. We're finally seeing the borders between countries are actually coming down in terms of cooperation. The United States, with its Artemis Accords, are trying to really expand its existing horizon. The current international cooperative tools, such as the International Space Station, etc., are still there, but we do know that those are outdated. We are looking for new horizons for us to collaborate on, most notably the moon, for which the Artemis Accords is trying to go for. And that really says on how diversity is important for us. Diversity in terms of country, diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of different roles that we identify with as engineers, pilots, specialists, lawyers, artists. So what you just said about having more artists and having more diversity in there, that's really what the future needs to go. And that is also what sustainability is. Sustainability for engineers is so much different to sustainability for humanity as a whole, and humanity like in all of its diverse forms and civilizations. So that's where I just like really need to agree.
And Brittany, what are your thoughts?
Well, answering the host's question about how we're sustainable. So I'm vice president of a volunteer club, and recently we've geared more towards being environmentalists. So for example, we work with the Coastal Preservation Network that's in Queens, New York, and we have basically done composting, and we've also done park cleanups and beach cleanups frequently. We do it about every 2 to 3 weekends a month. So we go to parks and we go to beaches and we literally get down, get our hands dirty, and we clean them up. And we've also helped them launch their 10K runs, which is where they raise money to continue to do those cleanups and have companies actually come in and help clean up, like larger companies that are able to be like have more impact and sustainability than us, and they'll donate to them and they'll also help us clean up. And as well, we host our own events in school for recycling. We created an actual recycling station in our school because you know how teenagers are, they'll just throw anything in a garbage can. So we have made the effort to have people dispose of their trash correctly and recycle properly.
It is not just teens, my friend. I've seen many an adult fail to recognize which is the recycling receptacle. Andrew, Brittany's work tends to flow right into your work as in marine science. You want to talk about that and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so one of a really big problem in all of coastal North Carolina is the fact that there's a lot of trash on the beach. And that's a huge problem. But one of the really big problems that a lot of people don't notice or know, and a lot of people should know, is if you go to the beach and you dig holes in the sand, if a mama turtle wants to lay her eggs and she crawls up on the beach, she's going to get stuck in that hole and not be able to lay the eggs. So it's really important if you go on the beach to fill up the holes if you dig them. And if you're just walking around along the beach and see a big hole, if you should try and fill it back in. Even if you just fill in one hole, that's still one possible mama sea turtle saved. So it's a really big thing. And some other ways to be sustainable sort of on the beach is the dunes. Dunes are really important from keeping floodwaters away, and they're great ecosystems. They're really a thriving hub of activity. We've seen lots of crabs. Some birds might make their nests there. But the problem also is housing companies. They like to build on the dunes because it's a nice beachfront view, beachfront property. They're nice houses, but the problem is they're on top of the dunes, which are really important to coastal North Carolina, all of coastal areas. They're a really important part of their ecosystems.
brilliant. Hashim, what sustainable practices do you guys engage in Pakistan?
I don't really know, not too much, but like in the north, I would say it's definitely way more cleaner. Like even the capital, it's like it's like one of the most cleanest cities in Pakistan. But uh, if I would say that I'm like not that sustainable, but I would not say that I'm like going around and throwing trash everywhere. Yeah, I don't really know.
So again, we can observe it. And then I think it is a call to action, not only to those who are listening, but to all of you to use your genius for all those good benefits. Rhonda, I know you're thinking of a question, even right now with that smile on your face. Any last questions that we have before we wrap up? I don't want to go. I just want to keep listening to all of you, your geniuses. So Rhonda, is another question you have?
I'm wondering if anyone has any good ideas about simplifying the messaging around sustainability. Sustainability to some folks looks like a big word and takes a lot of steps to be productive in it. How can the concept of sustainability be simplified and achievable in very few steps and get more engagement collectively for folks to have that in their awareness?
Ooh, good question. Oh, Priya.
That's a really good question. And I think in terms of just getting the biggest general support for sustainability would be to just focusing on oneself and their own community and their own surroundings. So I guess the way to best campaign or just break down sustainability to one specific person would just be keeping their own surroundings, being mindful of their own surroundings, and just doing their best to preserve their small environment or small building or just area around them, rather than having to advocate the idea of like preserving the entire world and, you know, making the entire planet greener by reducing, recycling, etc., marketing it as a way that each person would just have to take these sort of steps on a daily basis to preserve the community, the building, the area that they are around and they're living in, and just the usual sustainable practices of just saving electricity, recycling, and reusing and bringing and implementing their own policies in their schools, their homes, etc.
I love that. It's like a call to self-responsibility and kind of like doing sustainable practices in your own life, in your own backyard, and then circling out from there. Hashim, I see your hand.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it should be advertised like that. But also another thing, it shouldn't just be like people cleaning up. It should also be people that are governing the place that are actually trying to enforce the fact that like they could like pass laws or things like that that focus on sustainability that would also raise awareness, like pick up trash at least once a day or things like that, and actually try to enforce those laws that would help them.
Beautiful. Sachita.
If you're trying to explain like sustainability to someone, before asking them to, and I completely agree with all of the points like said before, but before asking them to say like, how is this gonna impact the world? How is this gonna impact your community? You kind of just want it to be like, focus on one aspect of sustainability, because there's a lot of things that you can tie into sustainability. So if you just pick one of those aspects, so just like energy, and you're just kind of making it a daily routine of using less energy every day, like turning off the lights when you are out of a room or some stuff like that, you kind of get it into your routine and get it into a habit until finally you can move on to like another aspect of sustainability you can do.
I like that. It's like find one topic and see if you can perfect that, it sounds like. I saw, okay, who else had their hand raised? Okay, that's Ander. What are your thoughts, hon?
So a really easy way to simplify it is just the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. In space, non-Mars, we're not going to be able to just have a bunch of plastic water bottles and be like, oh, let me just throw that in the nearest trash bin or crater or whatever. That's not going to work. We're not going to be able to have landfills. You're going to have to use that water bottle for a good while, keep on using that water. And something that happened not too long ago was there was an incident with bluefin tuna. They're a type of tuna that are really expensive and are said to taste a lot better than other types of tuna. And since they're really expensive, they can be as expensive up to $200 a pound, and they're really big. All the fishermen were like, oh, let me go get some bluefin tuna. So the fishermen took all of the bluefin tuna and they almost went extinct, which would have been really bad because bluefin tuna are also apex predators. They eat a lot of the fish, unlike maybe some other kinds of tuna. So suddenly the ecosystem was thrown off balance. So now there are really strict limits. You can only get bluefin tuna 3 days a week and you can only get one. And this is also applicable to space again, because if you're on space and someone eats like all of the lettuce or the carrots or whatever, suddenly if we bring animals to space, what are all the animals going to eat? So that's going to throw our space ecosystem that we've carefully created off balance as well.
A system of checks and balances. Hashim, I see your hand.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And another thing as well, that like it could also be advertised in a way that it's good for your business or whatever. Like again with the fisherman thing, um, that like if you take all the fish, then you're not going to do it again. Like paper companies that make paper, when they chop down a tree, they plant a few more so that they can continue making stuff, right? So it could be also said that it's good for your business as well.
Beautiful. I have another question. Currently in our world, there's of course an international conflict that you can't avoid in the news. And, when we see this kind of conflict, when we see the threats of potential use of nuclear weapons and that sort of thing, we never, as lay people and not as part of policy or governments, we don't know, is that a scare tactic? Is that news amplifying a message that isn't there? But for you guys, if you could speak to the leaders of the world, wherever there is conflict or, things, we're seeing, it's like, as Sachita mentioned, it's like there's 900 places that natural spaces that have been destroyed in the Ukraine. One of my favorite quotes by John Muir is this thing: we need places to play in and places to pray in. And that's what I think about when I think of walking through a national forest or going to the park or going to the beach. It's like those are sacred places where that really, we know that connecting with nature is a meditative process that kind of like encourages better immune responses, that gives us clearer thinking. So what would you say to the leaders of the world that, hey, if you keep going like you're going, we won't have a planet to live on and we're going to have to go elsewhere? Ander, I'm coming to you.
So first of all, war is really not sustainable because the missiles and the tanks and everything they're using for war is taking up finite resources that we could use for something else. Maybe a wind farm, a hydroelectric farm, maybe someone's house, some things that a lot of people really need. And also it's just a needless waste of innocent people's lives, which is really, really sad. And if I could tell them something, it would honestly be why there are much easier ways to solve conflict. You could just sit at a table and be like, all right, here's what I want. What do you want? Maybe we can find a compromise.
I elect you. Yes. Sachita.
Yeah, I completely agree with Andrew's idea. Because honestly, if we can come to a compromise without using warfare, that would be amazing. Because not only are they cutting down land because of the war, like protected areas are being cut down, but also there's like a lot of resources being used, and the whole world who needs those resources as well are scrambling to find other areas and cutting down more protected land so that they can find resources for the demand. So if I could speak to them, I would just show them a picture of the earth and then kind of show them another picture showing them how they're impacting it and how they're destroying the only home that we have.
You're really getting into something called the overview effect, which every astronaut has ever said, that once they looked back at this perfect blue ball, they no longer saw boundaries and countries or thing. They saw one great united, beautiful blue ball that was representative in how interconnected we all are. Our prayer is that our leaders would understand that more fully. Hashim, what would be your words?
I don't think that like if we just sit down and tell them that like this is what's going wrong, they probably wouldn't even care to what would happen. So like if we shouldn't like really, I guess we should talk to them, but like we wouldn't really work with them a lot. It would ultimately end up in our hands to like fix what's going on, not theirs, because the only thing that they really want is power, and we can't really change their mindset by saying a few words.
All right, so okay, so as the next person who answers, you might kind of like, you see that Hashim is kind of countered. It's like when power and ego are involved, you could sit down all day with tea and crumpets, and we might never change a person's mind who only is in it for power and an ego grab. So that's an interesting thought, and I don't think I think you're kind of right. So Priya, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to go off of that, it's important to first put the importance of collaboration and cooperation into perspective. And an analogy that I like to use is that, a cooked meal without varied spices is commonly considered to be bland. It is only when the salt and pepper, the black and white, is added that the dish becomes more appealing to the taste buds. Similarly, a lack of multiculturalism and diversity of thought on the final frontier just represents monotony. There is no novel opinions and backgrounds. And with countries coming together and to competition over collaboration, we're only losing out on the resources that the other side has to provide. There may still be conflicts, and like mentioned before, it is not always easy for everyone to stay best friends all the time, but it is important to realize what materials or resources do I have versus what do you have, and can we just find a middle ground to come share those two items with each other and progress forward, even if we don't necessarily like each other the most? And I think that's important to convey and put forward, that our ultimate goal may not necessarily be to make every single person agree with everyone else, because one, debate is important to advance any sort of technology or any sort of idea and progress forward, because if everyone was just in agreement with each other, there would be no progress. So with that debate would come in the opportunity to find middle ground and calmly negotiate a compromise to take the best resources from everyone and move forward.
And I think you're talking really not only for Earth, but as we think about the Artemis Accords, that is a clear way that, again, all of your thoughts are applying to how we move forward and collaborate in space. We've got several other questions and then we will wrap up, but I want to hear from these last hands that are up. Brittany, what are your thoughts?
So as Hashim said, I do understand, yes, people do have their egos, but at the end of the day, I think it's been proven time and time again in history that every hero or every person with a huge ego eventually has their tragic fall. So I think inevitably they will realize that as they continue to because the purpose of war is to destroy, and there almost always happens to be collateral damage, even though we have like new precision bombs, etc. It's just not compatible with the Earth and keeping the Earth going. So I feel like in the end, or at some point, they will realize that they're only running themselves into the ground. The more you extract and the more you use resources, the more you destroy the Earth, the less you'll have for yourself. So in the end, you're ending up fighting for nothing.
Brilliant. All right, Ander, your thoughts as we wrap up today.
So all of the ideas are great, and eventually it's all going to circle back to the human trait of greed. People are going to want more and more and more and more. Even if you give someone the perfect utopia, they get whatever they want whenever they want. The chairs are beautiful, they're really comfy. You have unlimited water, unlimited food, whatever food whenever you want. They're still going to want more. They're still going to want to control it all. There's always going to be that one rotten apple in the basket who's like, all right, I don't care if it's all perfect. I want to be the one making it all perfect. So really, it's just a fact that you can't escape. So really, the goal isn't trying to get rid of greed because it's always going to be there. The goal is just going to be to limit it, to make sure there's a lot less of it, to leave less room for problems and errors.
I will choose all of you for my space crew. All right, Catherine.
So the whole thing about history repeating itself. So whenever there's war, yes, it's caused by human greed, but also sometimes with war comes like great technological advancements. But war basically depletes our resources and takes more than what it is, like what it's the people who incite war want. So yes, with war you basically lose either way. But I think really the best thing to do is try to still get those technological advancements and use the resources for the best purposes possible without war or destroying things.
Beautiful. Hashim, we'll come to you and then we'll wrap up.
Yes, so another thing about war is that, like, yes, it's definitely bad, but in war, most of the time, it opens people's eyes like to this problem. Like for a long time, people would probably be ignoring it or whatever, and then all of a sudden this happens. Like not just with war, but like even if it's a minor sign or something goes wrong, that could help with opening people's eyes and prevent something bigger from happening.
I like your point. Sometimes it takes something coming to a head or conflict for us to actually take action and promote change. I would love maybe just a wrap-up comment from Rhonda and Antonio, and I'll throw it back to Hien, just on what you've heard today, how it relates to space with all of these ideas. Again, the beautiful theme of World Space Week with space and sustainability. A few final thoughts from both of you. Rhonda?
I'm really encouraged and impressed how, over the span of the last 10 years or so, with all of the younger people, and I'm reluctant to say that, but with youth engagement, the sense of ownership and the sense of accessibility has evolved, where more and more folks are realizing as we continue to maintain that space utilization is for everyone. And the barriers of entry are decreasing. And as we move forward into space exploration, space development, those barriers to entry will continue to reduce. And what I'm identifying is a significant increase in the sense of ownership and inevitability, and carrying that momentum of inevitability as messaging to engage a larger population that isn't necessarily specifically interested in space development. It's growing, and I see in the near future that is absolutely going to become a more powerful force that everyone on this panel is directly going to participate in, and it's very encouraging.
Antonio, last thoughts.
I'm also, my one takeaway from the session is that the concept of sustainability is also constantly evolving. When we talk about, this is actually my 4th World Space Week talk that I'm giving over the last few days. And in the previous ones, I've only talked to the adults, and most of us have pretty much the same idea of what sustainability is. But now talking to you is giving up new ideas of what sustainability will mean for the next generation. And I'm very glad to see that this is a concept that we are evolving over time. We're seeing a lot more representation and diversity in law and policy is coming into the definition of sustainability. Individual action as well as systemic and systematic change is now entering the language. This type of evolution and awareness is something that we would like to see, and it's very important for us for you to inform to the adults and current decision makers on what you want to see in their place. Like our last talk closed off with, what do you want the current leaders to think and speak about? And it's actually very important, and you do have the power to do that. You won't necessarily have the chance to go directly to your president or prime minister and demand the change, but collectively you do have a say. There are organizations out there, either domestic or international, that are recruiting students and young professionals to gather their thoughts and ideas and present them at the United Nations or present them at a government counselor level. And I'm seeing that every one of you have the power and the responsibility to do that. So I'm very happy to see that you know that these are things that you need to stand up for, and that I really hope that you will continue to learn more about these topics, do your research, but also to take action both as an individual and as together with the friends and peers you have.
And a couple of organizations, to your point, iGiant.org, they're looking for youth ambassadors, as well as Space Court Foundation, which Antonio serves a role there. They're also looking for your ideas on how we shape and form space policy. Thank you always to my dear friend Hien, who has given voice to a Space for Youth and providing this time. I will let you close, my love.
Thank you, Janet, for your brilliancy bringing in these amazing students of yours. I can see that they're truly mirroring you. You know, you're walking the talk. I'm so proud of everyone presenting. You showed that you are true space explorers, and you did represent our new species and the greatest good. With your new perspective on sustainability and and how you embody sustainability, and what you think what is not sustainability. Because I know the current state of the world is in a crisis, it's almost like in a rebirth, and I know we are now more at peace of mind, knowing that that you're the new species preparing us to depart for the stars. So thank you very much for your participation, and we'll make sure that you will have a voice out there. Make sure you follow Janet, janetsplanet.com, Antonio Stark, and all of his socials. Thank you for your time, and Rhonda Stevenson on, I believe, LinkedIn. We'll be having a recording of this available. We're gonna leave all of your details there, and I'm sure this will make some changes for the adults, and I hope they will listen to you. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Lastly, would like to take a group picture